Welcome to Distill the Bourbon Podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my co-host Chuck and Brian. Fellas, it's good to be back in the turret once again. It's been a long time. We've had a little bit of a break. Chuck, you and I have been a little bit under the weather.
Yeah, we have.
In the last few weeks.
Yep.
Brian, how have you been? Did you have any bad days? Did you only run 15 miles instead of 20 or anything like that?
Yeah, I cut down my mileage.
Yeah, I bet. Well, listen, it's great to be back in the room, drinking bourbon and talking about it.
Yeah, missed you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So since our last posting, you guys have gone off to French Lick, the Spirits of French Lick, as a matter of fact.
Had a great time.
Had a great time. We're working on that video now. We're going to put that up. It does have a little bit of sound quality issue that was just really noisy there.
Yeah. We were in a production place. There's machinery everywhere, and it was a noisy place.
But it was a fantastic visit. You guys had a great time, and you had some good juice, right?
Yeah. And we got to sit down with Alan, the master distiller, who is absolutely great.
The chief alchemist.
Yes.
As he likes to refer to him.
I like
he's
that.
Such a character. He's there in his bib overalls. Yes, chief alchemist and storyteller.
Yeah, well, he was fantastic, and I hope everybody has a chance to watch that video or listen to it, the audio-only version. It's really a great interview, and I'm sorry that I couldn't clean up the audio any more than is there.
We knew what we were getting as soon as we did the test there. It's like, this is a noisy place, but there wasn't an unnoisy place inside the distillery to do it. So, but the content's there.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Alan is quite the storyteller, and he's a historian as well. He knows a lot about the rich history of bourbon in Indiana, so it was great to do.
I love that he had I won't say nefarious, but homegrown learning process that has grown into
for sure
a real professional deal. All right. So, hey, you guys want to drink some bourbon and talk about it?
Yeah.
Let me think about it.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, isn't it?
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. So today we're going to go back to Western Kentucky and update things. We have some wonderful distilleries here in our part of the state, right? The Commonwealth has amazing distilleries from east to west and everything in between. And there are 3 bourbons here that are fairly new to me. And I think they're fairly new in general, are they not?
They are.
One from Casey Jones, one from MB Roland, and then a new distillery that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, it's the Bard Distillery in Graham, Kentucky. That's in Muhlenberg County. It's in the former Graham School. It has a cool history. The school was built. The first part of the school was built early in the 20th century. It was a coal town, and the fellow who owned the coal company built a school for the children of his employees, and it grew from there and had a long history. And it's all the Muhlenberg County schools have since been consolidated. So the Bard family, this is the family for whom Bardstown, or this fellow is a descendant of the family for whom Bardstown is named, started in the bourbon business 5 or 6 years ago, and they now have their own juice, and it's called Muhlenberg.
Muhlenberg has a great label, kind of a cool bottle right there. I think I want to taste some.
Yeah,
we have a pour here. Let's see what we got.
I think it's got a nice nose to it.
So this is the only one that I haven't had. This just got released, I think, about a month ago.
It's this summer, I think, summer of 2022.
I bought this at Beverage Barn, and it was a pretty reasonable price as well.
It was a reasonable price. We bought some at the distillery. I'm trying to think, was it $45 or something?
I know it's under 50 for sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I expected to be disappointed. I am not.
Yeah, it's good.
What's different about it? There's pepper, but it's not in your face.
Yeah, it's a rye bourbon.
Yeah.
It's an easy drinker though. It's got to be lower proof, I would say, probably 90 or 100.
105.
Really?
105?
Isn't it funny that these days we now say it's a lower proof? Must be, can't be 100.
Wild Turkey 101 lovers everywhere are
gosh,
screaming.
Hunter S. Thompson drank Wild Turkey 101 because he was a madman.
It's weird. It's in a 700 milliliter bottle as well, which isn't common in the U.S.
Yes, they talked about that on our tour. There's bottle shortages out there. Of course, there's bottle shortages in COVID supply chain disruption. So they had to settle for 700, which maybe that's one reason why the price is a little bit
Lower,
But I think it's good juice. I like it
too. All that bourbon consumption during COVID is really hurting on the bottle
industry.
Yeah.
Exactly. But you know what? It works about as well as anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say I would absolutely buy this and keep this anytime. Do you think this is going to make a cocktail?
I think so at 100 proof.
Oh, for sure it would make a cocktail,
Yeah.
but I think it's a good sipper.
It's a great sipper, but I'm just thinking, man, Manhattan made with that sounds delicious.
Because you said it's a high rye bourbon.
That's what it tastes like to me. I haven't seen the label.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it held up well in a cocktail.
I don't recall if they say that they're experimenting with a wheated bourbon or not. It's been 6 weeks since we were down there. Nice drive down there.
Mm-hmm.
It's well worth the visit. It's they've got employees now. The tasting room was pretty busy. People coming and going. So
Take me back to Muhlenberg County.
there you go. They're expanding, so they're doing well. And I believe this is their first locally made, self-made bourbon. And I
guess this is a 2-year, I assume, since it's
Well, at the
release.
back it says aged at least 1 year, which I'll tell you, it tastes
pretty good for
pretty
a
good
1 year.
for a 1 year bourbon. So, Chuck, do you know are they using the 50-gallon barrels, or are they using smaller barrels?
You've asked a good question. I don't think we've never been in the rick house.
Okay, because I know a lot of the craft distilleries, they use smaller barrels because there's
surface area,
yeah,
right?
surface area, so they can age faster.
So like a 25-gallon barrel or a
Right.
22 or something like that. Yes. You've asked a good question. I never thought to ask that question while we were there.
Because it does not. It tastes like a 4-year-old bourbon to me.
Yeah, it really does. It's smooth.
It is. Oh, we better drink up, Chuck.
That's right.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Man, I just spilled. That's not good. After one. So the next pour we're going to have is Barker's Mill from our friends down at MB Roland. And before the show, you guys were telling me a great story about how this came to be. Brian, tell me the story again.
Well, so the story that I heard was that Barker's Mill was originally supposed to be a contract distillate. Basically, what a contract distillate is, a liquor store or a grocery store goes to the distillery, picks their own bourbon, puts their own label on it, and that's becomes their private label.
Yeah.
So I was told they went through the entire process, got to the end of the process, and then just completely backed out. The folks at MB Roland thought the juice was very good, so they decided they're just going
Put their own label on
put
it.
their own label on it and sell it into retail.
And they have a great story on the back of the bottle about the mill. Chuck, can you remember any of that story?
It was a real life mill in Eastern Christian County where MB Roland is located. The town looked like it would be pronounced Pembroke, but down there they pronounced it Pembroke.
Pembroke, yeah.
So it was a functioning mill on a waterway near where MB Roland operates today. And they say that there was a distillery there at one point. I don't recall what the era was, but I think the mill finally became dysfunctional and was taken down in 1940. So they picked up a local name to apply to it. And by the way, you're talking about contract distillate like it's being used by a store or a liquor store, but there are entire brands that simply buy contract distillate.
Right.
Bradshaw
Right.
is a fairly big brand.
Right.
And it's made by Green River Distilling, and nobody makes any secret of that at all. Read an article about Bradshaw's in Bourbon Plus,
yeah.
and they're very open about the fact that it's coming out of Green River. So you can have some standalone brands that are using contract distillate.
And
Same thing
so-
with Duke from Green River, right?
Yes, I think so.
And Kirkland's the same way. It's a Costco brand, basically just out of 1792, and it's common knowledge that that's where it's coming out of.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a little taste of Barker's Mill.
Barker's Mill.
This one's a little hotter, I think, on the nose.
It is hot on the nose. Nose isn't quite as rich as the Muhlenberg.
Now I'm going to guess Brian likes this one.
I do.
Because it's a little bit on the peppery side for me.
It's very peppery. This is one that I never recommend to anybody that comes in the store, unless they tell me, they like rye bourbons or they like high peppery or hot bourbons, because this is a very unique bourbon. This one I've never tasted like this before, but I really enjoy it.
It is smooth and peppery at the same time.
Yes.
It's not harsh, but it's like a little explosion or going off in your mouth from that rye taste. But it is still smooth.
You guys know I'm a wheat guy, not a rye guy, but I like this. This is something that we'll keep here in the bar, and when we want a rye, high rye kind of thing, that I'll probably grab this bottle, and it don't surprise a lot of people. Now, it's not Peerless, which is my absolute favorite true rye whiskey, but it's fantastic. It is a bourbon, is it not?
It is
100 proof, I believe.
Now, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. See what you can make out there, Brian. You got young eyes. You can't be more than 50 years old.
Bourbon whiskey, 100 proof, bought in bond.
Wow, somebody backed out on a bottle in bond.
That's crazy.
And there's no age statement, which means
I wonder if that happened right in the middle of COVID.
Possibly. I wish
those guys down at
MB
MB Roland know what they're doing.
They do.
I don't think I've had a product down there that I didn't like.
Yeah. And what's interesting about these guys is they got in business, I believe, in 2009, which was a little bit before the bourbon craze. I mean, it was in its infancy in 2009, but they really got ahead of the game.
Yeah, first grain to glass craft distillery, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, right in our backyard, about an hour drive from our house, and
well, they're like a number of craft distilleries that are in our part of America, whether it's Southern Indiana, Western Kentucky. They're small, they're craft distillers, but they are ambitious. They have a big product line. You go to MB Roland, you've got a lot to choose from. You go to Casey's,
Casey Jones.
Casey Jones. My gosh, they must have 15 or 18 to choose.
I think they're starting to run into a problem where I think there's a state law or a federal law that you can only try 13 products, right?
You can try, yeah.
So they have more product than you can possibly try.
Right. Yeah, you have to make choices.
Yeah.
Tough choices.
But they're fantastic.
Some of them have more than one kind of bourbon. No question. MB Roland, they know what they're doing. It doesn't mean that you're going to like everything that they do, because they go for it in some cases. That dark fired corn that they make, makes for a very smoky bourbon.
Donna Stennett likes that.
Donna Stennett likes it. I've had marching orders to buy it for her. It's not my jam. But to borrow the phrase of some good podcast friends of ours, I don't want to yuck someone else's yum.
Well, there you go.
and as I'll also say, if I'm not going to drink it, it's more for the rest of you.
Right.
There you go.
And the cool thing about these craft distilleries is they're the ones that are pushing the envelope. I mean, the big guys aren't trying.
For real.
In the past 5 years, they've started to try new things, but the craft distilleries are what's pushed the envelope to try different things in the bourbon industry.
They're really exciting.
And, you can't go to MB, or I don't recommend you go to MB Roland and leave there without some of their dark cherry moonshine. I'm not a big moonshine guy. I don't like all those apple pie things. But that dark cherry with some Dr. Pepper, boys, I can do that all day long and twice on Sunday and watch a football game and be a happy camper.
That sounds like some real redneck stuff you're getting into.
Well, I've lived all across the southern states, including Alabama, so I guess I'm qualified. But yeah, it's pretty good, and what a great tour! What great folks! And if you don't reach out and find Mudcat down there, or Mike, what's the distiller's name that we spent some time with down there?
It's Mike.
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 Those guys are just fantastic, and they have some fantastic distillery cats, which always makes for a pleasant visit. But the guys at Casey Jones are keeping up with things. They're really growing. I can't remember how many dollars. They're putting millions of dollars.
Multi-million.
Are they getting a new still? Is that right, bro?
A new still, yeah. So if you've never been to Casey Jones, I'd highly recommend it. So they have a very unique still. Back when Casey Jones was a moonshiner. I'll let Chuck elaborate on that a little bit later.
You're on a roll.
But the new still is basically going to be an exact replica of that.
So it's
Now,
a coffin style.
coffin style.
The original Casey Jones was a coffin maker before he was a still maker, and he became a fantastic, amazing still maker and very successful, right?
That's correct. So of course the original still they built themselves. This still they're reaching out to Vendome, which is the largest maker of
Best of the
stills
best, right?
in the world. Yeah, which is also just happens to be in Louisville, Kentucky, the bourbon mecca. But yeah, it's an interesting story, and I'm just so glad when I heard they're going to do a new still. I was like, I just hope that they keep that heritage and that still that they have used for so long.
And since the first time that we went to Casey Jones to do a podcast, they've expanded their tasting room.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I flew out to visit friends in Vancouver, British Columbia, in May of 2022, and we got back over Memorial Day weekend. And on, I guess it was Memorial Day, we cruised into Casey Jones and walked in. It's like, what has happened here? They can accommodate a lot more tasters. We got to have a personal, just my wife and I, with the a shop employee. And she was terrific. I noticed that she had little Post-it notes behind the bottles, but they had 15 or 18 bottles. So, there was a lot there.
That's a lot to know.
And later, I talked to Peg, who's
love Peg,
one of the owners. She and her husband, and she kind of sidled up to me and she said, "So, how was she on that tasting?" I said, "She was wonderful. She's got a lot of personality, and was very accommodating." And Peg said, "That was her first tasting."
Wow.
I think she'd worked there for a while, but it was.
And she did great.
We were her maiden voyage, and she did terrific. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
And we bought enough to get a discount. I'll put it like that.
Well, let me tell you, the folks at Casey Jones just know how to do it. I've not met anyone down there that just wasn't a wonderful, lovely person. Peg and AJ are amazing. AJ's grandson, who runs the still quite a bit, is very cool, and I enjoy talking to him. And then everybody in the tasting room / gift shop, do they have merchandise still, or is that? Yeah. So, just a great place. You have to go to Casey Jones if you haven't been there. We love it, and come back, and you're going to come back with bottles. You're going to come back with Eclipse. You're going to come back with Double Barrel. And this one that we're about to try is their newest. It's their wheated bourbon. And I'm trying to remember if this one's won a prize yet. I can't remember. They are award-winning down at Casey Jones. But I tried this at Beverage Barn. You guys have tastings often on Fridays, right, Brian?
We do. So we'll have different distilleries come in, or maybe just representatives for brands come in. The great thing about Casey Jones being a small distillery is actually have their sales rep for Kentucky come in. Very knowledgeable, he sells bottles, has a plethora of knowledge about Casey Jones and their rich history. So it's great to have those guys down and have tastings.
Yeah, I just walked in looking for some other things. Had to buy some wedding gifts, and had my Casey Jones hat on, and this guy says, "Hey, nice hat." Yeah. And I look over, and there's Casey Jones tasting. It's like, all right, I'm in the right place at the right time. Yeah. It was great. So we talked, and I said, "Oh, what's this bottle?" He said, "Well, this is our new wheated." So we're going to try their wheated. I think this is their newest product, if I'm not mistaken. And man, it was fantastic at the tasting. And this is my first bottle, so I hope this is as good as it was on the day. Smells good.
Wow, that is sweet. That's that wheated bourbon.
Oh yeah,
that's some good stuff, man.
That's almost a little candy corn.
You know what? We're gonna have to blind this one day up against some big boys, maybe some Wellard or something.
Yeah, that would,
and see, because this is good.
With Weller.
I would buy this all day. How much does that run, Brian? Do you remember?
It's like $25-$30.
Are you kidding me?
It's super reasonable
for a bottle like this.
Yep. And that's a great thing. I love it when these distillers that get in the business and they make it a reasonable price, for your everyday consumer. Mm-hmm. There's bottles that are $100+, but your everyday consumer can't afford that on a weekly or daily basis. So it's great to see them, and actually these other bottles here is the same deal. And
well, I hope it stays that way. I have this feeling that people are going to find out about Casey Jones and MB Roland and now the folks that are making Muhlenberg
Bard Distillery.
Distillery, and Those suckers are going to.
And here's the thing: all of these are country distilleries. They're very convenient to interstates or Kentucky's 4-lane parkways, limited access parkways. Both MB Roland and Casey Jones are located within. One of them's located within 5 minutes of Interstate 24, which runs from Nashville to. Does 24 end up in St. Louis or wherever it goes off to? But it's right off in interstate.
Yeah, it's like an hour and 15 minutes from Nashville, right? So if you're in the Nashville area and you're looking for a day trip, this is a great place to go, man. You can get 2 or 3 in easy in a day trip, right?
We have listeners in St. Louis who've heard our original Casey Jones podcast and drove down to Casey Jones to buy some product. So MB Roland is 5 minutes off the interstate. Casey Jones is 10 minutes off the interstate. And the Bard Distillery in Graham, Kentucky, is like almost within sight of the Western Kentucky Parkway, which for all intents and purposes is an interstate. So they're off the beaten path, but they're close to the beaten path.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Western Kentucky bourbons making a big splash, so to speak, in the bourbon world. I love these. I would drink these all day. And
I love that comment about the $100 bourbons are tough for your weekly or daily purchase.
If you're drinking a fifth a day, you probably don't want to spend $100.
Maybe you don't need to be drinking a fifth a day.
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple of buddies I'm not too sure about, but we'll see. So, all right, fellas, what do you think? Anything else that you want to share?
Hey, they could hardly be any more different. I liked every one of them. It's well known to people who listen to our podcast. We're not big into the tasty notes. I think probably the favorite quote that I've ever heard was from a head distiller that we interviewed on one of our podcasts who told us privately. We were asking, well, what about the tasty notes? And his response was, tasty notes are largely a function of the marketing department.
Exactly.
Which I thought was an incredibly refreshing view of it. Yeah. Look, once again, if you're into, pulling out, we have friends, you have friends, you got people who work for you who are great at pulling out those flavors. It's not my thing. If I eat chocolate ice cream, I either like the chocolate ice cream or I don't like the chocolate ice cream. Well, actually, I get kind of chocolate notes off of chocolate ice cream. Yeah. But, you like it, you don't like it, you kind of, about it. These are all really different. They're all really good. Yeah. I'm proud of West Kentucky.
To quote Mudcat Mike from MB Roland Distillery, it's like, my level of sophistication is, that's good. No, I don't like that. That's about it.
These are all good. I would say that the Barker's Mill and the Muhlenberg are closer together. Of course, they're rye whiskeys. I don't know the exact mash bill, but they're definitely rye flavoring. The Casey Jones being wheated, probably we should have had the Casey Jones first. But I tell you what, it stands up well enough that its flavors speak for themselves.
I knew I'd like it the best, so that's why I put it in last.
And that's the great thing. I mean, look how close these distilleries are, and yet they still have their unique characteristics.
Very unique.
Each bottle is just very different.
By the way, this Casey Jones wheated bourbon, 109.7 proof.
Doesn't taste like that.
Smooth.
And it is 3 years old.
Oh, 3 years.
It is.
Fantastic. So big things happening at Casey Jones. They're expanding like crazy. They're building stills. I think they're building rick houses, maybe. And always great times at MB Roland. They continue to do amazing things. And
I think they're going to be making some investment down there as well.
Oh, is that right?
And so is the Bard. On our tour at the Bard Distillery, we got a rundown on how they're going to be expanding out of the old school gymnasium into the school itself. And I think they're talking about, kind of a retail emporium and maybe attracting a restaurant in there, which there's not a lot of competition in Graham, Kentucky. That would be great to have a food destination.
Fantastic.
I'm just so proud of all three of them. If it weren't good, I'd speak up.
Yes.
This is mighty tasty, sipping whiskey. I think the first two, the Barker's Mill and the Muhlenberg, they definitely would be good in cocktails. The wheated, probably a little mild.
Just enjoy the wheated for what it is, I think.
Amen.
But, fellas, it's probably a good thing that we remind our listeners that we have no affiliation with any distillery.
Nope.
Other than Brian owns 4 liquor stores and sells products, but we don't get paid for this. We just drink whiskey and tell you what we think about it. And in this case, We like all three.
I think no distillery would have us.
Yet.
Except as guests.
Yeah.
No, I like to brag on what's good. Okay, I'm gonna go on a little Chuck rant here.
All right.
So many people are chasing after allocated whiskey, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. More power to them, and I could join them in the race. There is so much good product on the shelves these days, and there's a lot of product that's available every day of the week. A lot of what we've had right here is available every day of the week at reasonable prices. Okay, maybe you won't find this in Wisconsin or Montana, but if you're within the sound of my voice, you can, or if you visit these distilleries, and you know how passionate I am about visiting distilleries. We're heading off tomorrow to go to Danville to visit one of our favorite distilleries for the 4th time. I'm a big fan of bourbon tourism. There's so much great product. If you don't want to join the allocated race, there's just so much. You don't
have to spend money to enjoy bourbon. If you want to, great. We've all said it. We're not collectors, we're drinkers, right?
That's right.
We're going to enjoy it. We're not going to flip bottles. I've never sold a bottle of bourbon. I guess, Brian, you sell bourbon every day, but you do it as a proper ethical businessman. So we don't flip bottles, we don't collect bottles. We just drink great bourbon.
I will admit there's a bottle of Weller 12-year-old that hasn't been cracked yet. I've been waiting for
that special occasion,
the big celebration.
Well, that's still, you're still going to drink it. You're not just holding it.
And we might be having one here in my household pretty soon.
Is that right?
Yeah, and we're not having a baby.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask, and I was going to be impressed. But anyway, with that said, fellas, anything else?
Drink responsibly.
Please drink responsibly.